we talk about design, but what actually is design? And I would actually contend that every decision that's made is a product of design. So every person is actually responsible for what they actually do. Design is actually a normal human trait, but the decisions based on what they do is actually based on preconceived notions and concepts, and to push them outside those bounds is where we are going with this new approach to city design. Even this red dot I'm on, someone's made a decision, place me here. So that is all by design. So sometimes design, we've got this concept that design is this aesthetic, creative consideration. That's only one very, very minor aspect of it. So for those, I noticed my tag talks about stranger and historian. I need to talk a little bit about Colonel Light and the City of Adelaide. The City of Adelaide was planned by Colonel Light in 1835. It's based on a grid. It's got 5 public squares, and it's actually surrounded by 460 hectares of open green space. The location for the City of Adelaide was chosen because of its proximity to water, fresh water, its proximity to the hills, and agriculture. The reason for the parklands, I've learned, was that he wanted a buffer from pollution. He came from England, where basically the environment was always grey and shady. But I'm not sure if Colonel Light was a visionary, or whether or not we've actually misinterpreted what his original intentions were, particularly as our central square, as 46% of it is actually dedicated to the vehicle. So, within that grid, since 1835, there's been a process of rules, and then rules for the rules, and we've ended up with quite a generic city that doesn't relate to its culture or its environment. And so the car, the city's planned perfectly for the car. We've got 21,000 residents out of a population of 1.5 million people living in the city. We've got the highest capita of car parking stations per head of population than any city in Australia. So, Colonel Light was great. He focused on the car, and we've actually adopted that. And we haven't been able to interrogate what his concepts were beyond what our grid system has given us. And so our city is a product of decisions and this normality, it's normal. It's a lovely city, it's a nice city, but it's a tad boring. So, a few years ago, the South Australian government had realised that there was something happening with our city. We need to really look at where we'll go in the future in terms of sustainability. They introduced these international people into the state to investigate what was wrong with the health of the state. And through that, they actually came to the understanding that we actually needed to place a little bit more emphasis on our people. As a consequence of these programs, the government initiated state programs, and the first one was the IDC, and with two... and Batman was Ben, the previous speaker. But one of the difficulties they've actually had is endeavouring to undo what's been basically built up since 1835. Looking outside the square, placing different emphasis on different things. So how do you actually achieve change? And whilst they've worked really hard for the last 2 years, and there's been a great group behind them pushing, I sense that the high government gets it at the top end, the low end gets it, but the people that actually make all the decisions at the middle band don't get it at this stage. And that may be a product of our education system, which actually has siloed all the education into specialist areas where we actually don't cross the boundaries and actually think quite laterally. So, and I'll put architects in that area as well. So what direction, how do you actually get a program, a simple program to work? How do you actually work against the systems? Because that's what we're actually talking about. It's actually what Ben talked about in terms of his processes. Where do you go from here? The IDC basically initiated a research program, which was called 5000 Plus, and spent 2 years researching through thousands and thousands of people from different communities, from different areas, to find out really what they actually wanted. What came out of all of this, and there was all these forums and speculations next door as an outcome of that whole process. But what actually came out of this is actually people are actually really important. People are actually quite diverse, and we need to relate to that. And that our environment is very important. And that we should actually look at what we've got here in the city and not elsewhere, and actually draw from that. So look beyond the regulations, look beyond the rules, and see what we can actually together work out what is the best place we want to live in. So, the focus is people, but one rule doesn't fit all. We've got quite a diverse community, particularly since the immigration that occurred after the Second World War. And what's quite evident is that our rules and regulations have been based on what was occurring 100 years ago, and we haven't actually transformed. We've just built up, built up, built up. We now need to look at our culture, our diverse community, and actually assess what we need to do to accommodate our future. So, but there are some retractors, and I think that's one of the issues, but I sense that this story is starting to evolve, and this is actually a University of South Australia third-year architecture students, where they looked at speculation that was actually put forward as part of this research program. And they've interrogated the grid, in fact, and they've put people first. I've got a film now that's going to talk about, it's only a 2-minute film, it's actually going to talk about people, our strengths, our food, our vibrancy, and I think this will, if we look, and it's in the city, it's a special place, I think if we actually focus on our people and draw from them, I think we'll actually achieve quite a unique, beautiful city to live in. Thank you.
I know what you're thinking, mister. A little of what you fancy does you good. Oh, well. I hold a little doodle 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 long. I hold a little doodle 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 long. I was working in the cake shop in the centre of the town, because a little of what you fancy does you good, look your dough. I was eating cakes and buns all day, my belly got fat and round, because a little of what you fancy does you good. A little what do you fancy? A little what do you fancy, boy? Because a little of what you fancy does you good. Doodle 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 long. I hold a little doodle 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 long. I went out with the lovely blonde. I asked her if she would, because a little of what you fancy does you good, look your dough. She said, my boy, it's cold tonight, but then she said I could, because a little of what you fancy does you good. A little what do you fancy? A little what do you fancy, boy? Because a little of what you fancy does you good. Doodle 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 long. I hold a doodle 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 long. I was standing at the beer bar, I was drinking rum and black, because a little of what you fancy does you good, look your dough. But when I went back to work, boys, the boss gave me the sack, because a little of what you fancy does you good. A little what do you fancy? A little what do you fancy, boy? Because a little of what you and said, does she go long? I hold it over the long. I hold it over the long.